friends, and welcome back to another episode of We Read It One Night. We are bringing you one of our most popular episodes, People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. I know most of you know and love this book, and we loved talking about it. So enjoy this re-release, and don't forget to leave us a rating and review wherever you're listening, and check out our Etsy store, all of which will be linked below. Enjoy the show, and we will see you soon.
So, most exciting news this week is that the Senate has unanimously passed a bill to put the United States on permanent daylight saving time, technically, which, if you don't know, means that we will stop the stupid time change and stay on summertime, which is the superior time and the only just time, let me say. Because for all those morning people who are like, oh, well, I want it to be light out when I'm awake in the morning. Well, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's like a huge contingent of people that like I don't even know what schedule you would have to work, but
Go to sleep at 5 p.m.
almost everyone is awake at 5 p.m., right? But not everyone is awake at 7 a.m. when like, you know, that's the time period at issue here. So it's only just to have the sun set at 5:30 instead of 4:30 in the winter. And it's good for everyone, hurts everybody, or helps nobody. No, what is it?
Helps everybody, hurts nobody.
The economy. It's good for the economy. Helps everybody. Hurts nobody. So yes, we're here for
Joe Biden.
Really, yeah. Please, I really hope it gets passed into law.
Anyway, those are like one of many fights that we've got into in our TikTok comments with people who try to come for us. Other things involve corsets and whether romance novels should have happily ever after. And I came up with a very good, people were like, this person who I guess write stuff and wanted to call their stuff romance novels even though they had sad endings. They were trying to like, you know, the classic, that's realistic. Love doesn't always have to have a happy ending.
No, the main argument was that they didn't want to spoil the ending. Like,
which is
yeah.
If you can't make me, if I know the ending of your book, and if the only reason I enjoy your book is because I don't know the ending, then you've written a bad book. Frankly,
but I mean, I get it for some books. Like, you don't want it to be spoiled. Like, I get it. But that romance novels are not one of those genres. There's so many other genres your book can fit into.
I understand you don't want it to be spoiled, but like, if a book is really good, even if I've read it once, like, I won't, like, you know what I mean? Like, I've read Agatha Christie books multiple times and enjoyed them every time. I just like, if you're finding out the ending so fundamentally ruins the book for you that you can't finish the book.
I think that's a weak argument. You have much better arguments in your arsenal.
Anyway, here's the thing though. It doesn't, you as a writer, like what you prefer to write only matters as you're writing it. The moment you try to get people to spend money on it, it becomes a commercial product. And if you label it something that it's not, then you are lying to the consumer and you are essentially like in some ways practicing fraud. Like, it's fucking fraud. Like, if I have one of those like toy Jeep Barbie cars for my 4-year-old, yeah, technically I could sell that as a car because it is a vehicle that moves at a certain speed and can carry at least one person a certain distance. But I would be fucking lying if I tried to sell it as like a full-size car. Like, it's not the same thing. No, it's not. Just because it has a love story in it does not mean it's a fucking romance. It's not the same thing.
In fact, if you want some backup for an author that is commonly, like, probably one of the most common of people like citing him as a romance author when he's not, Nicholas Sparks, if you're going to argue that, I would direct you to his website where the first like question and answer in his FAQ is, what is the difference between a love story and a romance novel? All right. And he'll lay it out for you. He is not a romance author and he admits it. So stop arguing on his behalf when he doesn't want you to. And no one else wants you to either. All right. People We Meet on Vacation is a book that I read like a year ago and gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. And yet, like, that was at the very, I mean, it was actually probably like 2 years ago, but it was in like my, like, you know, initial voracious, like reading a book every 2 days, like so many books that all blurred together. And then when I went to go start listening to it, I was like, I really have no desire to read this book again. Like, I can't remember why I liked it so much. Like, and I even got like, you know, a little bit of the way in and I was like, oh, this feels like such a slog. But then we got to like halfway in and I was like, okay, I remember.
That That happened to me as well. It wasn't even that I was like, "Oh, this is a slog, this is annoying." I think I was just not in the right like, sometimes you're just not in the right headspace to read books, and I knew because like, I was gonna have to take notes and, like, I'd already read it, like, there was just sort of that mental block. But yeah, by the end is just, like, so domestic that I just it was just so sweet, and Emily Henry is just such a good writer, but yeah, I in the beginning, I was like, "Ugh, I'm just gonna have to power through this," even though, like, it was a good yeah, I gave it 5 stars, I really like Emily Henry.
Well, here that's an example of not knowing what's gonna happen. Because the first time I was, like, really into it from the beginning because I wanted to know what was gonna happen and, like, what happened in Croatia and, like, all of that. But, like, by this point, I knew it was gonna happen, but I still really enjoyed it, like, by the time I got back into it.
I knew I knew what happened in Croatia because 'cause I'd spoiled it for myself, not because I wanted to know what happened in Croatia, but because the first Emily Henry book had some bad vibes for me personally, like, great written book, some triggering things in that for me, and I wanted to make sure that this one wasn't going to have that, and so I, like, read all the spoiler reviews on Goodreads, and then they, like, detailed what happened in Croatia, and I was like, "Okay, good. I'm fine with that. It's not gonna be something that's gonna upset me." But yeah, so I knew what happened in Croatia the whole time from the first read, and I really yeah, no. I enjoyed it. Emily Henry's really talented. This is a listener suggestion,
Is
by
it?
the way. This is
Oh,
a listener suggestion. I wrote
okay.
it. I wrote it at the top of my notes because I knew that I would forget. But this is a listener suggestion.
So this book basically flip-flops every other chapter between the present day and the past 12 years, which almost every year of those 12 years, the main character Poppy and her best friend Alex have gone on a summer trip together. So that's like the setup.
From when they met in college.
So we open up on I think it's like 5 years ago, and basically none of their trips, despite the fact that it's all about traveling and like being on vacation, none of their trips except for like one really made me jealous and made me like wish I could go on that trip. Like Tuscany, that I was like, oh, I totally want to go on that. But all the other ones, I was like, these are whatever. But I feel like the point. I don't know if it was intentional, but I feel like the point is like even though the trips aren't like some razzle dazzle like amazing, like there's they just like they like going on them because they like being with each other. Like that's like the main
Yeah.
thing.
No, I agree. Well, first of all, the whole point of their trips, especially in the beginning, was like trips like super like ragtag on a budget, like everything super cheap. And the Tuscany trip was like sponsored by Poppy's work. So like it's a little bit different. But yeah, no, I agree. The purpose of the flashbacks, I don't think was like the vacations at all. It was just like, I think it was just the conceit of Emily Henry being like, they see each other at least once a year. And here's like them at their prime.
No, no. Well, my point is like it would be easy to criticize it by saying like they only see each other, they talk a lot, but like they only really see each other on vacation when it's like not like really your real life. So it's like, how do you even know they'd be good together like in real life? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
something that was going through my mind. But I feel like the fact that like most of their trips, like this first one that we see, which is 5 years ago, it's like pouring down. It's supposed to be a beach vacation, but it's pouring down rain the entire time. But they still have like a great time and like just like hang
Yeah.
out. And then like the one where she gets sick and like they don't even end up going to
Oh
like
my God.
yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. But like
That's such a good scene.
that's more my point. Like
Yeah, no, it's definitely like it's them like being just very just like being like normal people. It's
yeah.
not. And part of like the whole theme of it is that like they sort of like as they sort of grew apart, it was like as they started taking the more like glamorous
Mhm.
vacations, like those were like worse for their relationship
Yeah.
versus the initial ones
Mhm.
where they like had time to bond and like just be Poppy and Alex.
So the only big takeaway from this like first 5 years ago in the rain that I really got from is that they have a conversation where Poppy is like, "You have strong dog energy" to Alex. And no, sorry, no, other way around, other way around. Alex is like, they're talking about his cat, and she's like, "The cat hates me. Like, why have a pet that doesn't want to be petted?" And huge red flag, first of all. If there's someone like be suspicious of people who don't like cats for this reason, like that means they just don't like animals and people that don't have boundaries.
Well,
Sorry, that have
to
boundaries.
be fair, this cat, which is I would like to point out, named Flannery O'Connor,
Yeah.
which is a fabulous cat name. The cat, the one time we actually see her interact with the cat, it like just full on hisses at
Well, she
her.
doesn't want to be picked up. She tries to pick it up without
No, she tries
consent.
to pet it. She like
No,
looks at
I
her,
read it
rubs
more
it.
recently than you. She tried to pick it up. It
I
rubs against
finished
her
it
leg,
yesterday,
and
Rachel.
she
Don't
tries to
I've
pick.
read
I
it more
finished it 5
recently than
minutes
you.
ago. She tries to pick her up. That's because I remember because I was like, you can't just scoop an animal up without asking. Anyway, anyway, and Alex is like to Poppy, he's like, you have strong dog energy. You got a wolfish gleam in your eye. Your dog in a human's body. But anyway, so we've established that Poppy's a dog. Alex, I would say, is a cat.
But okay, one thing about we introduced Flannery O'Connor in this flashback, and then in the present day, Flannery O'Connor is dead. And
Oh, I
I was
know.
so upset. I forgot about that during this. I forgot that Flannery O'Connor was dead. And I was crushed when I heard about that. I was so sad.
Without getting into too much detail, just the things that stood out for me is that we learned that Alex always carries cash, which never comes back. But it does make me wonder because Poppy's like, I don't know why he always carries cash. I've asked like 3 times and his answer was either too boring or too intellectually complex to bother remembering. And at first I was like, what could that possibly be? Because I feel like in general, if you're using cash, you're getting screwed over because other people are getting credit card points and you're paying higher prices because of that. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
what if, is it because Alex is a prepper? Because this seems like something a doomsday prepper would do, you know? Because if it's something that's like, quote unquote, intellectually complex, it's probably something that's either like, so they can't track me through my credit card, or so when all the credit cards machines are down, I still have cash, you know? Like,
Well, what I think it is. So okay, so important things to learn about Alex. We learn in the scene also that his mom died when he was like 6 years old. She died in childbirth. That's important. And his widower dad basically just gave up. And I understand the grief is strong, but this is once again a common refrain on this podcast. Parentification is a form of abuse, and Alex was severely parental. Like he basically had to raise
from the age
himself.
of 6.
Yes.
That's what I like mixing baby formula at the age of 6.
Yes, there are when he was like my dad wouldn't be able to get out of bed, and I had to make sure that like my infant brother was fed
And other 2
and
brothers
clothed, and the
understay.
other 2 got to but I'm saying, but literally, like he was taking care of a baby, you know, like the baby can't even hold its head up. His mom died in childbirth, which means like straight up from birth, he was raising his youngest brother. And God, I hate this dad.
Yeah.
And he does get called out, which I'm glad,
A little bit, not enough.
not enough.
He calls himself out a little bit, but like,
yeah. But yeah, and he also, so we learn about the Alex. He's also like reading a book in the bar, and there's been some recent discussion about this. So the premise of like this vacation is like they're like doing a fake hitting on you thing, like they're each playing characters, and like Poppy pretends to like pick him up because like they can only be in this bar because it's raining, and Alex is reading a book, and I just like it's not the like reading a book in this social situation that I don't understand. It's like bars are so noisy. Like how do you read in a bar? I don't understand. It just seems like it would be very stressful in general. I just wouldn't go to the bar. Like alternatively, just read at home. Don't go to the bar at all. That's the best scenario. Yeah, they run out to the car after that and then take like this really like bad picture that's like a cute picture because it's like just them, and that picture comes back.
And she's like, there are places you can see in their full glory with or without sunshine, but this isn't one of them. And I'm like, what are those places? Like Antarctica? The inside of the Met? Like, I feel like anywhere it would be like much better.
The Pacific Northwest.
No, we definitely need the sunshine. Are you kidding? I feel like half the reason we had such a great time up there was because it was summer and sunny. I still would have loved it because it was like Borks, but you disagree?
I don't know about that.
Come on. Are you going to look at me and you're going to tell me that I'm wrong? Her sister was a witch, bro.
What does that make her? A princess.
Poppy's current job, she's a travel writer for R&R. She's only required to come into the office once a week, and let me note that this was written pre-pandemic, so great score for Poppy. Definitely a win for her. And her best friend is named Rachel. I mean, she's not really that important, but she's like another like Instagram person, and also has dogs with medical needs. I don't know why all the people in Poppy's life. I just realized literally every single like main player in Poppy's life has a lot of animals with medical needs. Alex with his cat, Rachel with her dogs, her parents with literally like 10 cats and dogs that are all senior and have like, high medical needs. I didn't realize the parents until right now. I didn't like put it together.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that like Emily Henry?
Emily Henry, what are you trying to tell us? Like
adopt a senior cat? I'll do it.
Does Emily Henry have a senior cat?
Emily Henry might be a senior cat who's just
conspiracy unlocked.
Get your cash ready. Okay, so
yeah, but Poppy's having like millennial ennui,
cut to present
like
day,
burnout, creative block. She's sad because she's writing for rich people, but she like used to run a budget blog based on her and Alex's vacations, and I just like really related a lot to Poppy's burnout.
And her friend Rachel tells her like It's because, you know, before you like wanted something and now you have it. So you don't like, you like, miss wanting something. And she's like, look for your happiness the same way you'd look for anything else, retracing your steps. And can I just say that I always try to get people to fucking retrace their steps when they want help finding something. And it's always like pulling teeth to get them to try it. Like I have to like beg and like convince them so hard. And then when they finally do it, it always works. I don't know, like, it's like you with The Mummy, like, getting people to watch The Mummy, and they always complain, but then they love it. I don't understand. Like, I don't understand. Retrace your steps. Think about, what was I doing? Where would I have gone with this object? What did I do next? Like, so Poppy doesn't really have to do this, though, because she immediately thinks of when she was last happy, and it was 2 years ago in Croatia with Alex. But they haven't talked for 2 years, and that's a long fucking time.
It's a long time. Well, they've sent each other, like, happy birthday texts.
Yeah, but, like, I don't know. They've been friends for 12 years. They literally don't talk basically for 2 years. And I just feel like, I don't know. I have to suspend disbelief a little bit that like they've been like together, quote unquote, for this long and nothing's happened. And now suddenly, I
They
don't know.
both have to go to therapy before they ultimately get their happily ever
That's
after.
true.
Like, because they both have a lot of trauma. Yeah, I was like, it's been 12 years and you guys didn't bone once. Quite frankly, this book is really like modern day Harry Met Sally in a lot of ways. And Harry Met Sally is also like that. Like, they meet in college and they don't get together
Yeah.
until like their 30s, which is what
Yeah.
this
And
book
it's like,
is.
I wasn't able to see like what exactly was so different about this. I guess Poppy was finally ready to like explore, like, you know, stop running
Well,
from her
yeah, I think
past.
that's the thing. I just think that they both weren't ready for each other. But yeah, so this whole time you're like, what happened in Croatia? You spend like the whole book. You don't find out until the very end.
Yeah.
And I was like, of course, everything went to shit in Croatia. Like, of fucking
No, we
course.
can't go there. We can't go there.
Of course, everything went to shit in Croatia. This is what they get for stealing the whole coastline.
What, being
Justice for
slandered in Italy?
Bosnia.
Yeah, it's true. Let them have a little bit. Bosnia has 12 miles.
Like, Croatia was like, no, we're going to take this whole thing. We're going to take it all.
Oy vey. Anyway, so Poppy, after this conversation with Rachel, she is inspired to like spontaneously text Alex for a reason that's not like happy birthday for the first time in 2 years. And she's like, what do I say? What do I say? And she like drafts a bunch of different things. And finally she goes with hey. And then she
Accidentally.
accidentally sends it because she's like, I go to highlight and delete the word and then it accidentally sends. Why would you ever highlight such a short word like hey to delete it? Just like tap, tap, tap. I don't know. So it's really on her.
I'm always very, very skeptical in contemporary, just books in general, when people like accidentally send texts. Cause I'm like, how often does that truly happen?
Yeah.
Like, it's always some like, I think I've maybe done it like 2 times. And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. Usually when I accidentally text someone, it's because like I like
You
think
think it's
I'm
someone
texting
else.
someone else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah,
It's always
100%.
so I'm like, oh, my finger
I
slipped. I'm
know.
like,
And every
how?
time I'm so exactly, yeah, every time I'm so embarrassed that they're gonna think I mean, it hasn't happened that many times, but, like, just because it's also such a trope of, like, doing that and then, like, you know, intending to text them and being like, "Oh, I was meaning to text someone else," like so a little bit about a background about Alex. Besides the fact that he's, like, raised his three younger brothers, he has a PhD in English literature,
And an
and he's
MFA.
currently a high school teacher and an MFA. And she's like, "Oh, he has so much debt from his, like, doctorate." And the fact that he has an MFA, like, okay, that costs money. Like, he can have debt from that. But, like, if you're paying money for a PhD, you might as well join an MLM at that point. Like, don't fucking do that. What? You should be getting paid. You should not be paying them.
People definitely do. I've definitely convinced numerous friends who have been looking at grad schools where I've been like, listen, if you're going for a PhD and that they try to get you to pay, you're being scammed.
100%. That's, like, baseline. The bar's in hell at that level. Like, don't fucking pay. Anyway.
I just had a thought though, as you were talking about, I think the Alex's grad school degrees are like one of the big obstacles. That's the reason like they're not ready to be together yet, because like Poppy, like he's like in fucking Indiana or something. And like, you know what I mean? Like Poppy wouldn't move there. Like they need to be in a place in which they can be more flexible, which is like where they are at the end.
Anyway, other things about Alex, he's naturally super into exercise for his quote unquote anxiety. Definitely not because he needs to be super hot to be a romance hero. But he's super fit. He is generally pretty reserved I would say.
He's
Compared to
like the
Poppy.
ultimate, like, very hot but shy boy. I've never met such a man, but
Mhm.
I suppose they exist because people keep writing them. So, like, I
Yeah.
feel like there's got to be at least one if people keep writing about him.
So we flash back to 12 years ago when they met, which was at freshman orientation
They've
at
been
the
this
University
dumb
of
for over a
Chicago
decade.
And Alex was wearing, yeah, khaki pants and a University of Chicago t-shirt, which I don't know, khaki pants just like, okay.
And listen, let me pull an example from my own freshman orientation to just discuss how important clothes are in this context. This wasn't from like straight up orientation, like we hadn't moved in yet. It was from like summer orientation, like where you go in for like a day and like they give you, all that stuff. So I went there and I wore one of my Hawaiian shirts because I was going through my Hawaiian shirt phase at the time. I wore one of my Hawaiian shirts and like one of those like crisscross choker things, that were like popular in 2002 and then had like a moment in 2016. And so I was dressed like this just to give you an image. And I met my first friend at my university because they sat next to me and assumed that I also liked to smoke weed because of how I was dressed. And I don't like to smoke weed. I mean, I have a lot of friends that do. I guess I just give off the vibe of someone who like smokes a lot of pot. But they sat next to me and literally, and they didn't tell me this at the time, but they like sat next to me and we started like talking. And then like when we actually moved into college, merged our friend groups and like all of that. But afterward they were like, yeah, no, I you seemed like someone who was like chill because of your Hawaiian shirt. So for your outfit, I don't want to be the type of person that says clothes matter, but like especially in like specifically in the context of like meeting new people in college, like the vibes you give off will determine who approaches you.
Yeah. So Poppy like rocks up to Alex and just as an opening gambit roasts his clothes. She's like, "Oh, do you go to University of Chicago?"
Rightfully.
Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, I spilled some juice on my shirt. That's why. I'm sorry." And
He's
she's
so
like,
awkward.
"Yeah, oh, I know. I feel for her." And Poppy like dressed very like flamboyantly. Like she wears a lot of like vintage and clothes and like very bright colors. So it's like very much a contrast.
And later on, Alex is like, much later on, like we found out, Alex was like, yeah, I literally thought you were like a joke, like not like a joke, but he was like, I thought you were like basically a meme, like the first time I met you. And then I realized that like that was just how you were. Like this wasn't like a weird character you were doing. Like you were just like absolutely insane. And it was like life changing to like meet someone who
Yeah.
just like didn't give a shit.
So then they don't really talk again until the end of that year when Poppy's roommate is randomly like, "Oh, I have a friend who needs to drive back to West Linfield," which the town that Poppy is from is East Linfield. And like he wants to carpool. Like, "Do you want to do it?" And she's like, "Okay." And then she shows up and who's waiting with his like beat up station wagon as I picture it? But Alex.
It's literally like we talked about Harry Met
Right?
Sally. This is Harry Met Sally. They go to the fucking University of Chicago. They drive home at the end of their freshman year because a mutual friend arranges them to
Really?
drive
I need to
together.
rewatch that movie. Wait, they specifically say that it's May that they're driving home at the end of freshman year. That University of Chicago has been on a quarter system since 1892. All right. It would be ending in June, not May. Okay. All right. Am I wrong?
Are you finished? I
I'm
haven't
just
fact
saying.
checked you. You texted me this 3 days ago and I was like, why? Okay.
You
Why
don't
does
know
that
they're on the
matter?
quarter system? Everyone knows that.
No. What?
They're
What
on
do
the
you mean
quarter
everybody
system.
knows that?
Everyone knows that.
I've never known about University of Chicago. Whatever. And this scene, I just want to talk about this scene. Like, I feel like Emily Henry just does a really good job of making her characters seem human. Like, I don't know, she like gives them all these like random, like the fact that Alex always carries cash and the fact that like they don't like calling boats she gives them these tiny like realistic personality quirks. And a lot of times when authors do that, for me it feels like very forced. It feels like they just like wrote a list of personality quirks and they were like throwing them in here and there. But like Emily Henry just does it in a really natural way, and her characters always just feel very human to me. She just sort of like captures like who they are as people and also captures their like inherent chemistry really well, but also like them being awkward.
Yeah, for sure. So like it starts out, yeah, very awkward until Poppy like decides to start basically playing like 20 questions with like kind of like likes and dislikes.
She starts asking you about herself. And that's something we find out
Yeah.
later. Alex is like, you were asking me about myself. And it was the first time like anyone ever really like asked me to like be myself that wasn't like in relation to like what I could do for other people. And I was like, parentification is a form of abuse.
It's a good yeah, it almost feels like I didn't exist until that point, like, you created me, like, oh. And there's a lot of, like, random niche things they learn about each other, I forget, like, I wrote down some of my favorites, like, that he hates covers of songs, which is a very broad thing, but Poppy's like, "That's like saying you hate vegetables," and I'm like, "No, because vegetables are all different, like, you could hate all the vegetables, like, not different, but, like, you could hate vegetables as a category, but covers of songs is like."
For example, I love the Gary Jules cover of Mad World. What I don't love is the whatever the band that covered Africa by Toto recently. Don't
Oh,
like that
yeah.
cover. Bad. But he also Alex doesn't like the saxophone, and she's like, "Why do you don't like the saxophone?" And he's like, "Name one song that was improved by a saxophone." And they can't come up with an example, but me immediately I'm like, "Careless Whisper." Careless Whisper. If the saxophone doesn't
Ooh,
exist, we don't have
yes.
Careless Whisper.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, Alex, you're wrong. I
I
have one
know.
example right now. Even if no other songs are improved by a saxophone, Careless Whisper. You can't get rid of Careless Whisper is like instrumental to our culture. Like, I swear to fucking God.
Poppy is like, "Oh, I love chain restaurants because they all seem to have bottomless breadsticks." And honestly, I can only Olive Garden has bottomless breadsticks. If there are other chain restaurants with bottomless breadsticks, please let me know. Bread, sure,
Yeah.
but like specifically breadsticks, hit me up, please. Slide into our DMs
Yeah,
with
so
that
that I don't
info.
have to just continually wrap up Olive Garden breadsticks and stuff them in
Yeah.
my purse. Like,
Yeah.
please let me know. Yeah. Also, we have Alex has a foot fetish. Have another
Oh,
confirmed foot fetish from a
yes. Oh
hero
my
because
god.
he's like, I don't like flip flops because feet should be private.
I don't
And
like
I
seeing
was
them
like,
in public.
I was like, the only
Oh,
reason that you can have for legitimately not wanting to see feet in public is because you get an immediate hard on. Just like fucking admit it.
tell me you have a repressed foot fetish without telling me you have
Yeah.
a repressed foot
I was like,
fetish.
let it go. Like, let it be free, Alex. Like,
I
suck on
know.
some toes. It's okay.
Oh my god.
He's also says a Joni Mitchell song is his karaoke song. And my go-to karaoke song is All Star by Smash Mouth. What's yours?
It depends how you define karaoke. If we're talking about
What?
the God, what was the game we played? The American Idol karaoke video game. It would have to be My Heart Will Go On
My
because
God.
I was always capable of getting it perfect because the bars didn't change. So you just had to like hold like different notes for like a long time and you would like knock it out of the park.
No, I'm talking about like you're at a bar, you're singing karaoke.
I mean, I've really only done karaoke once and it was before he cheats with like a friend.
Oh. Yeah, I'll Start by Smash Mouth, and I know all the lyrics, and I get a fucking standing ovation every
No,
fucking
it would
time.
probably be Dragos Dente.
Besta no
Because I didn't learn all the words to that in Romanian in the back of a car in eighth grade for nothing. All right. All right. So back to the present day. What we skipped over is that Alex has responded to Poppy's hey.
Immediately.
And
Within like 5 seconds.
Hey. And she's like, oh, I debated just like acting as if he texted me first and being like, what's up? Like, or like, why are you texting me? But she works up the nerve to be like, do you have any free time this summer? Do you want to go on a trip? And he's like, yes, obviously. But he's already he already has his youngest brother's wedding in Palm Springs, California. And they basically work it out that he's going to extend that trip by like 3 days and she's going to come with him and come to the wedding. So she's thrilled.
She knows the brother, by the way. She's not just like inviting
showing
herself to his wedding.
So she like pitches it to her boss as like a trip that she could go on and like cover for the magazine, but her boss rejects it. And so Poppy is like spontaneously like, I need some time. I need like an actual vacation. I'm going to take some time off and go to Palm Springs. But she doesn't tell Alex that because she wants everything to be perfect and she doesn't want him to have to like spend extra money.
And she doesn't think he'll go if it's not paid for.
Right. Yeah. So she's going to pay for everything out of pocket. And Poppy, like, I got so many mixed signals. Like, she goes on this whole thing at the beginning where she's like, "Oh, I have my dream job now. My life is everything I wanted. I have this super nice apartment. I have like all the money I could want." But then through the book, maybe this was intentional, but I don't think so. Like throughout the book, it just like unravels more and more. She's like, "Oh, well, I do have a nice job, but like really the most payment from the job is like the perks and the travel. So like I really don't really get that much money. I don't have that much disposable income." And then she's like, "Oh yeah, and like my apartment is way too expensive for me. Like I don't really have that." I'm
Yeah.
like, "Okay."
Well, the moment she was like, "Yeah, I live alone in New York City," I was like, "Okay, so
And has lived alone for like 5 years.
the whole time." Yeah. So I was like, "Okay, so you're bad at managing." I was like, "Not possible." Okay. Sounds fake.
Yeah.
She lives in Manhattan specifically
Mhm.
alone and
Mhm.
doesn't seem to have a studio. So she has a one bedroom in Manhattan alone.
Mhm. She gets to Palm Springs and meets up with Alex, and it's only somewhat awkward.
And they do one of their whole thing is like constantly putting on characters. Like you see that throughout their trips. And so they meet this like random couple who's like on their honeymoon, like in the like the shared Uber on the way to the hotel. And the couple's like, "Oh, what are you guys here for?" And they're like, "We're on our honeymoon." Hee hee. And I just like, love the little fake honeymoon thing.
Yeah.
The
And
gag.
so they get there. I just have to, like, talk she's like, "It's so hot." Like, I thought from living in New York City and Ohio that I knew what hot was. And I'm like, "Girl, you fucking
What?
don't, and you still probably don't from Palm Springs, California. Because let me tell you, I guarantee it's not humid there, and until you have the heat, like the 100-degree heat and humidity, it's not hot. Because I used to be like that. Everyone around here would say like, "Oh, it's so hot." Like in the Northeast, they'd be like, "Oh, it's so hot in the summer. It's so humid here. It's so humid. You're gonna die." But like, it's like average like 49% humidity. Like maybe it'll get up to like 50 in July. That's not humid. Then you go to like Nashville, you go to Houston, it's like minimum like 69 every single day and 100 degrees. Like that is like, try me at 85% humidity and 85 degrees. Like that,
And
don't come at
yet
me.
And yet, you losers keep trying to convince me to move to the fucking South. And
No,
I'm
it's
like, I don't
no.
understand. The humidity in the Northeast is too much for me.
No,
Why
it's
would I go
horrible.
anywhere with more
No.
humidity?
No, you're missing the point. It's horrible in the summer. The thing you have to come to terms with is it more or less horrible than not seeing the sun and having it be cold for
I
like 6
like it
months
being
of the
cold.
year?
That's the difference
Yeah,
between you
well,
and
fair
me. I
enough.
fucking like it when it's cold.
All I'm saying is your argument that it's somehow inconsistent is not
I will
correct.
say about Palm Springs, it's like 125 degrees there. Like, no, like that's not a fucking exaggeration. Like that's what their summers are like during peak. So like even if it's dry heat, here's my thing though. You've never really been out west in like a desert area in summertime, have you?
Mm-mm.
And, like, as someone like, I wasn't even there during fucking like, when I went to Arizona for, like, spring break a few years ago, like, that wasn't even like, obviously, like, peak heat, but it was, like, hot there. But, like, the dryness, like, my lips were cracking, like,
Yeah.
I had a fucking basically clown-like lips in terms of, like, the amount of red around it's obviously
Yeah.
not the same as humidity, but it's just like the dryness is like it's the other end of the spectrum and it's like just as bad. Like it's so dry,
Mhm.
like horrendously dry there and you don't even realize how dry it is until you like get home and look at your face in the mirror and you're like, "What the fuck? Like I've aged 20
Yeah.
years."
No, it really is crazy, like, because sometimes I won't even, like, realize if it's dry or not until if I try to go for a run and I'm, like, within, like, 5 minutes, my, like, whole mouth is dry, and I'm like, "Oh, wow," then I
Yeah.
check it, it's, like, 33%. I've become much more attuned to that over the years.
Yeah. No, like it's insane. Like, and I wasn't even there during peak time. So like I can't fucking imagine. Like Palm Springs is known for being absurdly hot in the summertime during like
Mhm.
peak season. I just want to talk a little bit about Poppy's backstory. So you know that Alex is parentified. Poppy's whole trauma is that she was like bullied in high school. Her family is like really weird, but like in a good way. Like she loves them, but she both like loves them and like loves how weird they are, but is also like protective slash embarrassed of them because like people always like would laugh at her family and like reject her for like that was part of the reason she was bullied was because she like didn't fit in TM. But then she's like even in my family like I felt like an extra calls it like an extra bolt. She's like my two brothers had each other and then like my parents had each other and even the dogs had a partner. But she doesn't feel out of place with Alex. She always has felt like she belongs with Alex. And that's like a constant refrain. Like and I'm just like they get to Palm Springs, it's super hot, and they get to their hotel and or they get to like their Airbnb and the air conditioning is broken. Like, and so it's like 85 degrees, like in their room, and there's only one bed. And I'm like, Emily Henry, you knew what you were doing because you knew that you were going to have to tease me with there's only one bed in order for me to make it through all these chaste flashbacks, all these totally fucking platonic flashbacks. You knew you were going to have to tell me that there's only one bed was coming.
And like, I guess Poppy made the reservation, and Alex like acts suspicious of her. He's like, "Are you sure it's at 2 beds? Are you sure?" Blah blah blah. And I was like, why would he think that she would want to trick him into one bed? Like, I was like trying to think back to what happened. Like, I don't know. But flashback to their first trip, which is after their sophomore year of college, and it is to British Columbia, no, Vancouver Island. And so they have like a great time. It's like very like on the cheap, and they meet like their water taxi tour guide is a guy named Buck, who is like their age and invites them to like come stay with him in his like, fun house, basically, like just a bunch of like people hanging out and like doing drugs and like, living the life in Vancouver. And he's like, you guys can sleep in a tent in my front yard. I don't know why. I honestly would never want to do that versus my own bed. But I get it because I get it's Poppy's like, oh, this is exactly what I wanted to happen, like to have like random people and like random chance encounters like this.
Poppy is like, they're traveling on the cheap shoes with Alex, and Poppy's like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And she thinks it's like discovering new things and traveling, but I know that it's spending time with Alex. I was like, I see what you've done here, Emily Henry. The old switcheroo, their old reverse Uno card, if you will. But yeah, Buck is like, oh, are you two a couple? And Poppy's like, no, we're just friends. And like, I'm just like, and Alex is just already gone for her. He's like already just completely like,
she's like, we're siblings without the sibling part, without the related.
And Alex is like,
and so Poppy ends up making out with Buck.
The whole time she's comparing him to Alex. The whole time.
Yeah. And she's like, I don't want to have sex. So she's never had sex at this point. And Buck is like, oh, that's okay. Totally fine. But then he's like looking at the door and she's like, oh, do you want me to leave? And he's like, well, if we're not going to sleep together, there's a lot of other girls in the house I could be getting with. And she's like, okay.
And Poppy's like, I could be mad about this, but this is just objectively hilarious. So like, I'm just going to go find Alex. So she goes to find Alex and she goes to sleep in the tent with Alex. And Alex is like immediately ready to like go beat Buck the fuck up, which he definitely could because Alex is again ripped inexplicably. But Poppy's like, no, it was funny. And then she's like, why aren't you like making out with Daisy, who's like one of the other girl, like one of Buck's friends? And he says like, Daisy isn't my type. And Poppy assumes this girl named Sarah, who we know is in the future and like the current time is like Alex's like long-term on off again girlfriend. Currently she's just like a girl he has a crush on like in the past. And Poppy assumes like Sarah's his type. But like, I'm like, no, Poppy, it's you.
So back to the future, back to the present. They're like trying to figure out what the fuck to do with this like ridiculous hotel room. Poppy's like freaking out because she thinks that it has to be like so perfect or else he's not going to want to be there and like blah, blah, blah. So they decide to go swimming in the pee pool.
So they go down to the pool. We have mutual sunscreen application. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just say that again. We have mutual sunscreen application. And then they're like, it's still so hot. So they go upstairs, they take a shower, and they accidentally see each other like naked because the bathroom is like weirdly like futuristic and like spaceshipy. And like Alex takes a shower first and then he comes out in a towel and Poppy's like, oh my God. And then she goes into the bathroom and then she like runs out in her towel and she's like, Alex, why didn't you tell me the bathroom's like this? And like Alex like is like butt naked and there has to like pull the towel up. Is like, oh, hello. And I was like, Poppy, Emily Henry giving us the good stuff, like right off the bat.
So they get in the pool. There's like when there's swimming, there's some more tension. Like it's so crowded in the pool that like Alex has to like grab her and like pull her back towards him to like get her out of the way of some like man in a Cheshire, like I don't know,
in a hat,
in a wide brimmed hat, a Cheshire.
Anyway, flashback. We got their second trip. They went to Nashville. How'd you feel about that, Rachel?
We don't really get anything about their trip, I feel like.
That's because Nashville's fucking boring.
Okay.
I'm sorry. My main takeaway from Nashville is that it has bugs large enough to give me a black eye.
Everywhere is boring. There's the same things to do everywhere, basically, unless there's like historical landmarks and like cool
it's like
shit
country
like
music and also bugs big enough to fly into my face and give me a black eye. That happened to me. That's a real story. I have pictures of the black eye.
That could happen anywhere in the lower 48
Where that has
or
never
Hawaii.
happened to me in the Northeast.
But
That
it
has
could.
never happened to me
But
in the
especially with the
Northeast.
spiders that are coming.
It didn't even happen to me in Florida.
But it could.
Could it? Or is it just Nashville?
So basically Alex comes over and Poppy's mom is like, it's like, oh, here, honey, take this for the trip. And it's a 50 pack of condoms. Um,
And Poppy's like, Mom, we're just friends. And she also is like, I haven't even had sex yet. And when Alex hears that, he's like fucking shook. And like Alex has had sex. And while they're joking around about it, like Poppy realizes she wants to kiss Alex. And I'm like, just bitch, just do it. Just you could save yourself like 10 years of
That's what I'm
nonsense.
saying,
You just did it.
And this is when they like kind of, I don't know if this happened before this, but they like kind of confide in each other about what we were saying, their backstories. And we find out that specifically, well, I don't know if we have to get into it, but like Poppy's whole thing was that her like first boy that she liked or whatever, like told everyone that she gave him a blowjob, like, and people were bullying her for it.
And just like making fun of her family. And Poppy's whole thing, she never wants to go back to their hometown. So Alex is living in their hometown and like Poppy never wants to go back there. And it's a big source of conflict for them because like in the present day, she's constantly roasting Ohio, which is where they're from. And like Alex always gets like quiet or like flinches a little bit when she does it.
Because he's thinking it's like a personal, because he really wants like a traditional like family. All he wants is to like settle down and have his own family. So every time she says that, he takes that as like a personal, like more of a dig that like they can never be together.
But also because fucking Sarah, you found out at one point, the first time they broke up, Sarah says, our relationship is as boring as the library we met in.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck you, Sarah. I forgot about that. I don't think I like internalized that the first time I read this book. And I did the second time. And I was like, you know, I was feeling really bad for Sarah the first time I read this. And now I'm not so sure. Sarah kind of fucking sucks. Who says that to people?
Yeah.
Alex also has a lot of issues with babies / childbirth. Like a lot of like he wants kids, but he also like has a lot of trauma because of his mom. So just like remember that.
And so like Poppy during this whole trip keeps trying to bring up like in the modern day, in the current day, she keeps trying to bring up like inside jokes or like things that she remembers from all their previous trips. And Alex like acts like he doesn't remember it. But when later on we find out he did, he remembers everything. But he like I don't know why he's like, oh, I didn't want to be like, it would be embarrassing if you knew like how much I remember like everything about you. But like, so what? Just like let Poppy be embarrassed on her own? Like, I don't understand.
He was just trying to like protect himself at that point because he was like, I can't, if I like start doing that, then I'll be vulnerable with her and then like I'll get hurt again. You also find out, so we're back in the present day. Nothing happens in Nashville except for, you know, the condom scene. And you find out that along with the cat, Alex's grandma died during their falling out. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, why were all these people?
Honestly, like, why didn't his grandma get custody? Like, instead of his dad?
She should have.
Quite frankly.
Because Alex was too fucking good at being parentified and nobody noticed.
God.
So there turns out that there is a second bed. It is a chair bed. It is like a pull-out. I've never heard of this. Like a pull-out bed, but like in a chair, not a sofa. And they have like, Alex is like, oh, I'm going to sleep on the chair bed. Because he's like, being a gentleman or whatever, because they can't sleep on the bed together because of what happened in Croatia, which is fucking stupid. And they have a little moment on the chair bed. They're like joshing around and like she falls on him and it's like, ooh, and then, they immediately get awkward. And then the next day, Alex has a back spasm because he's 30 and I guess you start to have those.
I used to get back spasms when I was like 11. It was horrible.
What?
Yeah. I've told you this story like maybe 3 times over the past like several years and you're always like, what? But like, yeah, it would always happen if I would be like laying, like, you know how you would like lay on your stomach to like talk to people or like in a circle in youth group or whatever? That would be like a huge trigger. One time it happened at the fair and I just remember like I was on like the bounce castle and just like my whole entire backseat stuff. It was horrible. Then I had to like lay on the like bench with mom for like while everyone else was like hanging out. Yeah.
I have no recollection of you telling me.
Yeah, it's horrible. I don't think it was as bad as like what he has because his like the pain.
His is like he can't move for the whole day.
Well, I couldn't.
So we have like a little like pseudo sick bed scene in which Poppy's like going to buy him ibuprofen and like fetching him water,
food and a sandwich, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want you to be fussing over me. Like, go out and do something." So she like goes out and like wanders around the art museum for like 4 hours, and then like brings him a sandwich, but I was like, he hasn't all he's eaten is, like, breakfast and, like, the sandwich, like, 8 hours later. Like, what's going I don't know. You could do better, Poppy.
Yeah, but he's like, I started getting back spasms. He started getting back spasms shortly after Croatia, and I was like, it's because your body misses Poppy. That this is it. Your body is telling you something's wrong, Alex. But also, so we get a flashback to the third trip, and they go to like California for a wine tasting. Poppy's dating like a shitty boyfriend. Alex doesn't like him, obviously. Poppy in the wine tasting, like they're a little bit wine drunk. Poppy freaks out about dying alone because she realizes her boyfriend's like shitty. And Alex says, I love you and we can die alone together. And I'm just
Hmm.
like, God damn it. Fuck. Again, this man does not exist. Show me the Carfax.
Oh.
But they go to San Francisco as well. And there's like multiple cute moments. They're like eating at a restaurant. They're just like exploring the city. And he makes her drink water while she's like drunk one night.
Yeah, and then I actually didn't take any notes on San Francisco, I just have New Orleans, but and
Nolans.
yeah. Yeah, in the present day, like, they're talking about, like, how shitty, like, dating is and whatever, and Alex is like, "Yeah, like, the dating apps, like, I do so bad on them, like, I'm crashing and burning," and Poppy's like, "Well, let me see it," the classic, like, "Let me see your Tinder," and so he lets her see it, and she's like, "Oh my god, this is, like you have, like, 5 pages of information about yourself on here and, like, only 1 group picture, like, no one's gonna know who you are, but they're also gonna know everything about you, so there's gonna be nothing to talk about." So she, like, writes him a bio. She's, like, has a headboard and a full-time job, and then, like, picks out some good pictures for him.
And she chooses a picture that she took of him in Tuscany, like when he found out that
Mhm.
he got his, because Alex, is trying to get stories published. So he found out his first short story got accepted by Tin House, which is very prestigious. And it was like a spontaneous picture she took of him. She's like, you should use this. And he's like, very clear, like, oh my God, you still have that.
And he's like, "You really think women will wanna go out with me based on this or whatever?" And she's like, "Well, I would. Like, it would definitely work on me. Like, I would definitely swipe right on you." And he's like, "Oh, well," and she's like, "You wouldn't swipe right on me. Like, I know you wouldn't." And he's like, "Let me see your profile." And then he, like, looks at it and he's like, "I'd swipe on you. I
It's so
would."
cute. It's so cute. She also sees a job listing. She's like she's trying to pull up Netflix so they can Netflix and chill. She sees a job listing on Alex's computer for a professorship in New York City. And she's like, oh my God, Alex might be moving to New York City. And they have like a brief fight. This is before the Tinder scene. They have like a brief fight about like how Alex thinks Poppy hates the suburbs and how Poppy says like she doesn't. She just doesn't want him to settle for Sarah, who doesn't like appreciate him and called him boring like the library they met him.
And also hates Poppy.
Yeah, Sarah hates Poppy. Understandably, frankly. I get why
Yeah.
Sarah doesn't like Poppy, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, so they have a cute little Tinder moment and then they Netflix and chill, but without any of like the chilling because they're both just like,
It's
I would
like
swipe right on you.
the scene in Twilight when they're watching the, like, tape in class and it's, like, electricity.
They're like digging their palms, their fingernails into their palms.
Gritting their teeth.
So now we have Nolans.
Mhm.
They go to Nolans for the fourth trip. And I'm just like, oh my God, like these two dummies just need to like communicate with each other. But like they won't, like, and they just can't, like they're just too dumb. And Poppy has a new boyfriend named Guillermo, and Alex is with Sarah now for the first time. And Poppy's worried that Guillermo only likes changeable things about her, like he doesn't like who she is. Because he goes home and he's like, wow, like you're so different in New York, like it's great. And she's like, oh no, like he only likes me like because of the things I changed about herself. And I'm like, Alex loves everything about you, Poppy. Please remember that Alex loved you from the beginning, you dummy. But she doesn't yet because we still have 8 more years to go.
Yep.
They have a cute little scene where they dance in the streets of New
Oh,
Orleans
yeah.
on the street and like they both feel like nobody else is there. And it's like particularly significant because Alex like doesn't like he doesn't like PDA, he doesn't like being like the center of attention in public, but he like they both, feel safe with each other.
Mhm. We also have a cute little scene where they're accidentally staying in the French Quarter and it's super fucking loud at all hours of the day. They can't sleep. And this is where I say to you people, earplugs. I know what you're going to say to me. You're going to say to me, "Oh, well, Rachel, I can't sleep with earplugs. It's more distracting than the noise." And what I will say to you is that I used to be one of you people. I used to think I couldn't sleep with earplugs. In fact, I didn't even know how to put in earplugs. Secret is that you got to like twist them up. You can't just like try to shove them in there. But the thing you have to ask yourself is it better to try to sleep with no noise, or am I the kind of person who's not going to be able to sleep no matter what if there's noise? If you're the latter, buckle through it and it will change your life. Anyway, if any earplug companies want to sponsor me.
I hate earplugs. Also on this trip, Poppy reads Alex's short stories, and she thinks about how like she felt lonely as a kid and how with Alex she will never feel lonely again. Just like more. Just Emily Henry, like you just like you think you can stand up straight and walk to the finish line of this book, and then Emily Henry just like swings down on a vine with a frying pan and just like knocks you down once again with this kind of shit.
With what?
With a frying pan. She's like on a vine with a frying
Wait,
pan,
with
just like
what specifically? What scene are you talking about?
with just her reading Alex's short stories and crying and then
Oh,
being
yeah.
like, I felt so lonely as a kid and I will never feel lonely again as long as I have Alex. And I'm like, God, Emily, chill out. Use the frying pan to make some eggs. You don't have to keep hitting me over the head with it.
Oh. Back in the present day, Alex is taking a shower and then coming out fully dressed, sadly, but with water droplets still clinging sensuously to his forehead and neck.
So they go to Vale for their 5th trip. Guillermo has dumped her, and Alex and Sarah are dating seriously. And Sarah doesn't like Poppy, probably because she knows her boyfriend
And
is in
won't
love
follow
with
her back on
Poppy.
Instagram.
Yeah, won't follow her back on Instagram. Their friendship is like awkward, and like Alex will only call her when he's like driving to the gym in like the morning or like driving back in the afternoon because like I guess he can't do it around Sarah, which is like, dude, if you're dating someone and you have to like be sneaky about a relationship with another person, like one of those relationships needs to end. Like you can't like not a good relationship. Don't do that. And yeah, they go to Vale. Sarah didn't really want him to go to Vale, but he did anyway. He has also adopted Flannery O'Connor at this point, who I guess is like, she's like an older cat, but like also, because I was wondering, I was like, how is Flannery O'Connor dead in 8 years if like he just got her? But like it says like she's like has a bunch of medical problems and is like older but like looks small, and he just like constantly texts Poppy like pictures of her, but at that point when he first gets her he hasn't named her Flannery O'Connor yet, so he just calls her little friend.
Little cutie or something like that, right?
Just calls her, he has a bunch of names. He calls her like cat, like cutie, like little friend, but like specifically little friend.
Yeah.
Great.
But you're missing the main thing from Vale, which is that he carries Madame Zeroni down the mountain.
Poppy sprains her ankle, which was very triggering for me. Emily Henry, I feel like there needed to be a trigger warning as someone with chronic ankle sprains, having to read about someone chronically spraining their ankle. Which I definitely read this book like right around the time that I had that really bad sprain and then had to hike down a mountain. Let it be known, listener, that this same thing happened to me. And despite being with my brother and sister, neither of them carried me down the mountain. I had to limp down the mountain. My brother kept sprinting ahead. Like Rachel at least provided her body to lean on. But Stefan, like every time he came over to like help like relieve some of my pain, he would just like start power walking. And I was like, I can't go have that.
Well, Stefan, like that was probably like slow for Stefan.
But he would like speed up. And I was like, sir, I don't understand why you're doing this. Anyway, so I didn't have this experience, but Poppy does have the experience in which Alex like picks her up and carries her. This is why he has to be buff, Rachel. It's not even because he has to be hot. He has to be buff so he can carry her the whole way down the mountain.
He doesn't, I feel like usually in this type of scene, they make it seem like easy. But he's like, oh, it's going to be tough. Like, I have to.
He does have to regularly take breaks. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back in Palm Springs,
they're leaving for dinner, and Poppy like tries to dramatically like fling the car keys to him so he can drive for some reason, even though he's injured. But they fall like 2 feet too short, and then he like can't bend to pick them because of his back spasm. So she has to pick them up. But it just got me thinking about the short car key throw in media, because like it's interesting how many different implications that one action can have, because we have the Jake Gyllenhaal version, which is like dick boyfriend who just doesn't care enough, and then we have Anthony Bridgerton version, which is someone intentionally trying to be a dick who immediately regrets it, and then it's just like, why do I feel guilty? Why do I feel guilty? And then we have this where it's just like klutz girl accident, whatever, but somehow the girl always ends up being the one to pick it up. And I don't know what that said, but
is that the topic of your next dissertation?
No.
Maybe.
There will be no.
Anyway, they drive around Palm Springs. They go to the zoo. They see some goats. And I personally think goats, like, I know goats are associated with the devil. And frankly, I think that's entirely justified. I'm sorry if you like goats. This isn't like goat personality, but like, have you seen goat eyes? Like, those. If Satan has eyes, if Satan is real and he has eyes, like, those are his fucking eyes. Like, what the fuck? Why do goats have eyes like that?
Or do you just think that because the goats are
No,
old?
I remember, again, I went also in the West in very hot weather. It was at the ostrich farm when we were like driving down the highway. We saw this giant sign for like ostrich farm, like come see them. And so we went to go see the ostrich farms, and they also had goats. And I saw a goat face
They're
to face for the first
adorable.
time since I was like 6 years old at a petting zoo. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh my God.
Your prejudice is set in.
No, I was like, this is terrible. What the fuck? Why do you look like that? Oh my God. Like, I was like, you're casting a spell on me. Like, what? Horrible. Anyway, Alex gets heat exhaustion. And I'm like, is it heat exhaustion or was it the goats putting a spell on? Like, did the goats curse you? Like, is that I think I'm landing on something here. I think this was actually the secret message that Emily Henry wanted us to get, is that the goats are responsible for Alex getting heat exhaustion.
So, like with basically every other trip, this is a great example of like everything goes wrong and it's not like perfect, but like unlike the past times when they still always have a great time, Poppy is like super anxious and wants everything to go right. 'Cause she like for some reason, even though they've never had like a perfect trip, she for some reason thinks that like if this trip isn't perfect, like it won't work out. So she's really like anxious about this the whole time. The next day she like drags him to like all these different places. Like, no, sorry, this is the same day, but she like keeps wanting to drag him to like all these different places. They go to like a dinosaur, like, roadside attraction. Finally, Alex is like, can we please just go home? And she's like, I don't know if the apartment will be fixed. Like, this is horrible. Blah, blah, blah. Like,
They get a flat tire
Mm-hmm.
and they have to get like a tow truck. And tow truck drivers are just like insane. Like, I would like tow truck
Why?
drivers to like feature more prominently and I say like insane in like a complimentary way. I don't say this in a derogatory way. But like the time when we were trying to come pick you up from camp and we went through like the McDonald's drive-through, and then the car hood started smoking, and then like we couldn't pick you up from camp obviously and had to get a tow truck. And the fucking tow truck driver, first of all, it was like five of us crammed into the front truck bed of his truck, no one wearing seatbelts. My head was banging against the ceiling because this man drove in the middle of the highway, drove across the long grassy medium, like down a hill to like make a U-turn. And we were like, I was like, are you allowed to do this? And he was like, I'm a tow truck driver. We're allowed to do like whatever, like special things. Like, and I this is another thing where like for a decade at least, I didn't question this. I was just like, oh yeah, tow truck drivers are just like allowed to do, like, they don't have to follow normal driving. Like, I legitimately for like did not question it for a moment. But no, this guy was just insane.
Just like Mr. Gibbs, or what's his name in Adventures in Babysitting. Another classic. If you had never seen 1980, when did it come out? 1987?
I feel like
Adventures in Babysitting.
1989.
Chris Columbus, some of his best work. You should see it, but
Yeah, not the remake, the 80s version
Mhm.
of Adventures in Babysitting.
A classic. It actually holds up. We have watched it with people who never saw it as kids and they laughed. So
Take that.
if that's not a glowing recommendation, I don't know what is. But so, okay, next flashback.
First vacation we saw, the one where it rained the whole day at the beach, and we find out that like this is the first time Poppy realized she was in love with Alex, but of course she's too much of a coward
Oh,
to
yeah.
say that. They get back to the hotel room, and it is 90 degrees. Like, it doesn't, because they called the guy, the like Airbnb host, and his name is Nikolai, and he was like, you just have to lower it 1 degree at a time, which is the most nonsense thing I've
Doesn't
ever
make any
heard.
sense.
And so they tried doing that, and they like got it down to like 78, and then like they come back and it's at 90, and they're just like, they have like basically they both have like breakdowns, and they like just start yelling at each other. And like Poppy like basically confesses like she's like, this has to be perfect, like we have to like be friends again, like this is supposed to fix things. And Alex is like, things can never go back to the way things were. And it starts to rain, and then we got some confessions in the rain, and then they like kiss, and then of course it cuts away. But it's okay because this is like the best flashback in the whole book,
It is
frankly.
very rude to cut away just when they're about to make out.
They're supposed to go to Norway because Alex was like, I want to let's go somewhere cold next time at the
Mhm.
that first trip that we saw, the like island
Mhm.
trip. So Poppy has this whole like they're gonna go to an ice hotel, and like she has this whole like trip planned through R&R because like now she's working at the fancy magazine, but then she gets sick and she's like, Alex, just go without me, like I'll meet you later or
Mhm.
whatever. And of course Alex doesn't do that. I also want to point out that Alex is constantly like, Flannery O'Connor reminds me of you, Poppy. And Poppy's like,
Oh.
haha, like why? Like, is it because she like scratches people or like whatever? She like makes all these jokes. And he just keeps being like, because she's a tiny fighter.
And I will say, this book is an example of a book where the fact that Poppy is a small person is referenced an appropriate number of times. All right?
Yes.
We get it. She's small, he's big. We are not hit over the head with it.
There are no being picked up like rolled up newspapers here, my
He
friends.
struggles to carry her down the mountain despite the fact that she's small to
Yes, very realistic.
him. Yeah.
But yeah, Poppy's like, having fucking fever dreams in which like Flannery O'Connor is like chasing her through like a nightmare world. And then she hears banging at the door and she like thinks it's like the cat like smacking her across the head with like its paws, but it's actually Alex at the door. And she like opens it. She's like, what the fuck? She thinks she's hallucinating. And she's like, I told you to go without me. And he's like, bitch, fuck that. Of course I'm not gonna fucking go to Norway while you're like dying of she has a pneumonia, we find out.
Yeah.
She has fucking pneumonia. He's like, what? No. And he comes and he takes care of her and he cleans up her pee. And I know it's so gross, but like frankly, there is like nothing more romantic to me than like someone willingly cleaning up, like changing your sheets after you've peed the bed. Like, what an expression of love. I really can't. I
Yeah.
can think of few things that are like a better expression of love than, doesn't even have to be
Mhm.
romantic love, but like than willingly cleaning up someone's pee. In this scene, while they're sick, they kind of like break down all their walls while he's taking care of her. And I love sick bed scenes so much. And he tells her about his mom and how he like never talked about her as a kid because his like dad couldn't talk about her without being
Oh,
sad. He's like, I
yeah.
can't really remember a lot
Aw.
about her, but like I remember as a kid always telling people like she was like the best singer in the world. And then like when I was like 16 or something, I was at my grandma's house and I like saw a home video of like her singing, and she was like truly a horrendous singer. And he was like, that was like, it was basically, he was like, this is the first time like I thought of my mom as like a person rather than like a
A
warning.
boogeyman. Yeah, cautionary
Yeah.
tale. I know, it
Which
made me
is,
so mad.
God, if this dad wasn't already shitty for like totally abandoning his responsibilities as a father, like he's also like ruining
I know,
his
this made me
wife's memory with his youngest son, who his wife died giving birth to, like doesn't know anything about his mom because
no.
the dad just totally, and like listen, I have compassion, like I understand that grief is really really fucking difficult, and it's really really fucking difficult to be a single parent to 4 kids that are all like 6 and under. Like I get that. That is hard. I have a lot of empathy for the dad. But he and I understand also that like men, especially men of his generation, like weren't encouraged to like express their emotions in like productive and healthy ways. But it's just so
No, that would the excuse for that would be, like, if he, like, clammed up and was just, like, whatever, like, too stoic, but he was, like, the opposite. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I
he's
know.
such a shitty dad. He's such a shitty dad.
Yeah. Again, why didn't Grandma Betty get custody or, like, show them these
Maybe
videos
she didn't
before?
fight. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. This reminds me of I always, like, I had the same thing with, like, our mom. Like, he would always sing and he would always be like, "Oh, my voice is, like, so bad. Like, I hate, like, my voice has always been so bad." But I was, like, always, like, I always thought it was, like, so nice.
And she's also like, Poppy realizes during the cigarette thing, she's like, I'm more in love with him than ever. But she's scared, like, if she tells him, she'll ruin their friendship and she'll lose him. That's like the big, like, both of them this whole time are like, I can't tell the other person how I feel because I can't lose them. They're too important to me. And so she like pushes it back down.
Mhm, and they have like a sexual tension, like, cuddling scene when she's
Oh,
sick
yeah.
too. Yeah, and so then after rudely cutting away, we are back to the makeout scene.
And it's not just a makeout, baby. It's full on balcony sex, which I'm like, can people see them?
They can hear them. We found that out for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and it's such a fake out because she says something like, "I couldn't have imagined kissing him would be this good. Like, if I had known that it would be this good, it's, like, better than any sex I've ever had. Like, if it could be this good, I would always have been doing it." So it makes you think, like, what could have happened in Croatia besides, but, like, I don't know. It just seems inaccurate.
I guess
Like, I guess
like that was like a drunk kiss.
yeah.
Spoiler alert for what happens in
Yeah.
Croatia. But Poppy's like, shit, I'm not on birth control. And Alex is like, don't worry, I have a vasectomy.
My God.
And we're not gonna tell them yet why he got the vasectomy.
No, but Poppy's like very like heartwarmed by this, but yeah.
And Poppy's like, if there was like one person I would want to like, I guess like do it bare with, it's Alex. And so they fuck on the balcony and Poppy's like impatient. She's like, stop making me wait for you. And Alex says, stop being impatient. I've waited 12 years. I want this to last. And then Alex is also really good at sex with her. And Poppy's like, how are you so good at this? And Alex says, I remember what it sounds like when you like something. And I'm just, it's so fucking cute. They have mutual I love yous.
Yeah, they say I love you. Yeah.
God. Anyway, if you know someone like Alex, please slide into my DMs with his contact information. I would be willing to marry a man if he was like, you know what Alex is? Alex is Pa 20 years early. You know what I mean? Alex is Pa in his youth. Yeah. For sure.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. He's full. Yeah, he's full on Pa because he's literally been a Pa to 3 boys.
Well, no, he doesn't have the beard yet. The beard is important to the Pa. The full Pa transformation requires a beard, but Alex is Pa like pre-beard, which is fine. He doesn't have to have a beard like on the wedding day. God. And then they try for round 2, and that's when Nikolai comes in.
Yeah, the landlord. He like finally comes in. He's like, oh my God, like I thought you guys were just being dramatic, but it's fucking hot in here. He's like, I'm so sorry. Like I'll refund you. He doesn't comment on the shredded plastic that like Poppy has like cut up.
Yeah, because there's construction. There was construction in the hotel room.
Well, also the pool has been drained at this point, so they can't even go.
Yeah. But it rains. They have sex on the balcony because it's raining. So it's
Nikolai's like, I'm so sorry. I'll refund you. Like, go to a hotel. And they're like, all right, we'll go to a hotel. So they check into like what honestly sounds like Disney World's like animation resort. Like it sounds like one of, like the whatever like Disneyland resort you stayed in for senior trip, like those like themed ones. That's what it sounds like.
I stayed in like the Rock and
like one of those. But there's one that's like super colorful. I can't remember.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've driven by it, but that's what it sounds like. And but it's like different like. I forget, like I forget what that. It's like colored themes. Anyway, they go there
as they're leaving. They find a Groupon for a fancy spa because there's the couple that they met in the like car ride in the shared Uber. It turns out that they've also been staying at the hotel and they heard them have sex.
And they were like, we can't use this, so here you go. Like it sounds like you're having a good time. How it is.
They were like, we couldn't use it because we were too busy using our room. Like sounds like you guys were too. And I was like, oh my God.
Did they end up using the spa Groupon though? They don't.
I don't know. But it's just funny.
It's funny, yeah.
And they go to the hotel and there are 2 beds in the hotel room and she like goes in to take a shower. When she comes out, he's like asleep on his bed. And Poppy's like, I don't want to presume anything about us like cuddling. So I am going to go sleep in the other bed. And I'm like, God damn it. You dumbass.
Bro, first she's like, usually in general, I love sprawling out on a queen size bed on these trips. And I'm like, do you not have a queen size bed at home, girl? Like what? Like why? Like what size bed do you have at home? That you anyway.
Maybe she only has a double. She lives in New York.
She's also like, oh, I don't really enjoy showering, but like this shower is really nice. And like I love showering, but I get what she's like, because I hate having to like brush out my hair and like do all these things. And I totally get that because it's like all the things you have to do before and after that like ruin the experience. It's like having to do things before bed, like even like flossing is like sometimes too much for me.
Sometimes for me, the shower, it's like it's even just like having to do things in the shower. And I'm like, I know like collectively, like even if I'm just doing the basics, like this could take, especially now with my haircut, like the actual like showering thing takes like 5 minutes, maybe longer if I'm letting my like conditioner sit in my hair for a little bit longer. But it's just like I'm like, oh, there's just so many things I have to remember to do.
See, I just like stand there for like 10 minutes straight, just enjoying the water, and then I like do my shampoo and that's it. Like,
yeah.
So
anyway, now we finally have. Oh wait. No, I'm sorry. It's not the Croatia trip. Now we have the Tuscany trip.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going on a double couples trip. So it's Alex and Sarah and Poppy and Trey, who's like the photographer that they were supposed to work with in Norway. You also find out at this point, very just randomly, Alex and his brothers are named in alphabetical order, which is just very Bridgerton of Emily Henry to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the 2 middle brothers are names, but Alex is the oldest and the youngest is David. We also have a flashback with like Grandma Betty at her before she died, obviously, at her like like someone's birthday party, like I think Alex's
The
dad's birthday
dad, yeah.
party, and Poppy and Grandma Betty are in the kitchen. And Grandma Betty is basically just like, listen, I like Trey and I'm glad that like you love him and like you're happy with him, but like TBH, I thought you were gonna end up with Alex. Like
Mhm.
that's yeah. And this is
Mhm.
when we get Flannery O'Connor hissing at Poppy, and Sarah's like, wow, she really doesn't like you. And Poppy's like, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to scratch your eyes out.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I didn't mention. Okay, this is totally a purpose of nothing, but I just remembered it, and I just remembered that I didn't mention it. Alex is described as a young hot cat lady at heart. That's just important to
As
note.
if all cat ladies aren't hot.
Yeah. This is why
Like
we need the cat scale. We are
right.
reclaiming the cat lady
Mhm.
identity.
Mhm. So, Tuscany though, this is the first trip of theirs that I'm, like, really jealous of, like, I would totally go on this trip, not that I wouldn't, like, go I would go to Canada, whatever, but, like, this is, like, sign me up. It's, like, a villa, they just, like, lie around and eat all day. They see how long are they there for? 'Cause I don't know, the way it's described is, like, this routine that they have, but there's, like, 3 different routines and, like, it doesn't
I
make
think
I
it's
don't know,
like they're there for like a week. They're in like a villa, you know what I mean? It's not like they're like traveling around. They're sort of like they're based in one spot.
Anyway, so then Poppy goes to pick up some snacks, which I would just like to read the quote, "Aged cheese and meats, fresh bread, and a variety of jams in tiny jars, and lots of wine," which just ideal snacks.
Mike Newton, is that you?
Yeah,
An
a
array of
variety of
wines to
tiny
choose
jams
from?
to choose from.
That sounds delicious. Oh my god, you know what's really fucking good? Fig jam. You ever had
Fig
like
or fig?
fig jam?
Oh, yeah, I like
There's like fancy fig jam. You can get it at like Acme or something.
yeah.
It's just really fucking good.
I just love figs, period.
Yeah. Anyway, it goes really well with like brie. Like it's good with like your like homemade charcuterie boards. Anyway, Poppy basically makes the charcuterie board. They're all around like a fire in their Tuscan villa and they're like bonding. And Sarah complains that Alex doesn't like PDA, but also like drops that they are like probably going to get married. And Poppy's like shook. And it all seems to be going well. Like Sarah's like Poppy's like, wow, like me and Sarah like can be friends until Sarah and Trey start roasting, like ganging up on Poppy about liking The Bachelor. And like Sarah Loki implies that she's a narcissist. And I was just like, you guys suck. I was like, I want
But I think in general it goes well, like, she likes them.
yeah, yeah. But then on the last day,
Dun, dun, dun. So we've been, like, getting a few, like, every so often, it'll be like Poppy will be like, "Oh, I'm feeling so nauseous," but it's probably just a migraine, or like, "I haven't eaten," and she's like, "Oh, I'm feeling so nauseous." And then she's like, "Shit, I haven't gotten my period." And she's like, "The closest 24-hour grocery store was 35 minutes away." And I'm like, "I frankly do not believe that there are any 24-hour grocery stores
yeah,
in rural Italy." Like,
no,
there's not even one in, like, suburban Pennsylvania
there
anymore.
was one. They got rid of it.
Yeah. Like, what? Anyway, she manages to go and get, like, 3 pregnancy tests, and then she's just, like, crying in the kitchen, and Alex walks in because he's about to go on his, like, morning run, and he's like, "Oh my god, like, what's the matter?" And she, like, tells him. She's like, "What do you want?" She's like, "I don't think Trey wants to have kids." And he's like, "No, what do you wanna do?" And she's like, "I don't know." And he's like, "I'll support you, like, no matter what." And she's like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, you and Sarah are just gonna, like, buy an apartment right next to mine? Like, how's that gonna work?" And he's like, "I don't like, whatever you need." And then she takes the tests and they're all negative, and Alex, like, starts, like,
Breaks down.
crying from relief, and he's like, I don't know what I would do if anything ever happened to you." Like
Because for him, pregnancy is like he wants kids. For him, pregnancy is like also kind of a
I mean, it's life
like
or death for
potentially a death
everyone, you just don't talk
sentence.
about it a lot,
Sure,
yeah.
but like for him, like he just sort of has that trauma because of his
Right,
mom.
right.
And then they never talk about it again.
Mhm, and they start becoming increasingly distant after the Tuscany trip.
Yeah, because Poppy's like, oh, I like Alex really would change his whole life for me, and like it's like I'm not like making room for him to have his like own life and like build his own thing with Sarah. Like it's just like not fair. So I have to like put distance between us. And I'm like, or you could just date Alex yourself. You could
Mhm.
also just do that.
So, the next morning, back to the future, the next morning after they've had sex, he is gone when she wakes up, but he comes back with a cinnamon roll and a latte.
Delicious.
Delicious. I hope it's Cinnabon. Even if it's not, cinnamon rolls, 10 out of 10. And they don't talk about it at all, and she's like, "Why like, what's going on?" Like, she's like, "I have to be okay with, like, if nothing changes after this, like, I have to
Yeah.
be okay with it."
Poppy's like, I won't make it awkward. And by doing so, She makes it awkward.
Well, Alex does too, like, he doesn't bring it up, and it doesn't make any sense considering his whole thing was, like, "I want it to be, like, deliberate when it finally happens, like, blah,
Yeah.
blah,
Well, I
blah,
think
which
it's
means
because
something."
I honestly think Alex's motivations is because she fucking slept in the other bed. So he probably woke up and he
Mm.
was like, "Oh, that's how it's okay." Like she just wants to pretend it didn't happen again, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm just going to pretend it didn't happen. But then they go to his brother's bachelor party, but right beforehand they like work stuff out. They finally are like, "Okay,
Yeah, 'cause she's
like
like, "Why
we're
didn't we
not."
just, like, spend the entire day fucking instead of like, why didn't have you looked at me the whole day?" And he's like, "Oh, well, it's because it's kind of awkward to have, like, a raging hard on at the pool. Like, I can't look at you."
Yeah. But then so they have a quickie right beforehand and then they go to and you think at this point you're like, "Wow, they finally worked it all out. They're going to make it."
Mhm.
Not so, friends. Not so at all.
So they get there and are greeted by Alex's brother David, who is marrying a man named Tom. And so I only ever listened to this book as an audiobook until I was trying to finish it desperately in the last hour before we recorded this. And so I pulled up I found it on the library. Pulled up the PDF of the actual words, like the ebook. Tom is not TOM. It is THAM. So do with that what you will, reader. But anyway, David is like super excited. Like they're holding hands when they come in, even though, Alex allegedly doesn't like holding
He
hands.
doesn't mind PDA with Poppy.
David's like, "Oh my gosh, like you guys are finally together. I'm so happy. Like been waiting for this."
And oh, David tells he like Alex like goes off to I don't know, like do something to like go get drinks or something. And David tells Poppy, he's like, "I'm glad that like Alex has you because like Alex is kind of an empty nester." And I'm like, thank God someone just like
I know.
straight up called out like the parentify. Like David's like just
Mhm.
fully, he's like, "Yeah, Alex was my dad."
Mhm.
Fully. And like I'm glad like he like we sort of moved on to our own lives and like he was like by himself. David also reveals at this point that Alex was going to propose to Sarah.
He had the ring and
And
everything.
yeah, and Poppy feels super guilty because she like blames herself for forcing Alex to choose her all the time.
She's like, "My default was to ask for what I wanted and he would give it to me, even if that wasn't the best thing for him." And I'm like, this whole explanation, if you just like listen to it on the surface level, like it makes sense sort of, but then it's like so convoluted. It's like, why? She's like, it feels like an admission of guilt that we kept whole parts of ourselves, our hearts for each other. And I'm like, okay, it's not guilt if you just own it. Just be with Alex.
So yeah, so after the bachelor party, they get back. Poppy confronts Alex about Sarah, and she's like, "Tell me, like, I'm not the reason that you're not with Sarah." And Alex is like, "Fuck off. Of course you're the fucking reason I'm not with Sarah. And of course, like, you're the reason I got a vasectomy because, like, I got so scared after your pregnancy scare that I got home and immediately got a vasectomy.
Without
And I
asking
didn't,
Sarah
he's like, I didn't even think to
or
ask
tell
Sarah.
Sarah, not even ask.
Yeah, to tell Sarah I was doing it. And then as I was like going home, like, I saw a ring and it was like a vintage ring. And he was like, that would be perfect for Poppy. And he was like, at that, like, he was like, I went home and I broke up with Sarah like immediately afterwards. He was like, I can't be with her because I'm doing all these things for Poppy. And I was like, my love language is men getting vasectomies for me.
He not only had a vasectomy, he also froze his sperm because he's like, I took precautions just in case it's not
Yeah.
reversible. And that seems like much more involved. Like, I feel like you have to go multiple times probably. And like in all that time, he still didn't like even think to tell Sarah. I don't know.
No, like that's so much.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so they're yelling and Poppy's like, oh my God. And she like feels so guilty. And Poppy's like, and Alex is like, dude, like, no, like he's like, I don't know how to love someone as much as I love you. And like, he was also scared of losing her.
After watching last night's episode of The Bachelor, it's a little bit of a trigger for me because he's quantifying love.
Oh my God,
But
no. Okay, yeah. So
yeah.
then they like make out.
He's like, and you like every like tiny thing, things that would be tiny, like feel huge with like when you said you would swipe right on me on Tinder.
Oh, he's like, I've spent like 12 years, like,
I've been in love with you since the day you went inside to make out with that pothead taxi driver.
yeah. So the next day they go to the rehearsal dinner and he's holding her hand and Poppy's like, you don't have to hold my hand. Like, you only have to do it when you want to. And he says, Poppy, there may come a day when I don't have to be touching you at all times, but today is not that day. And I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck, Alex? And this is when he admits that he like pretended to forget about all their like inside jokes because he like didn't want to embarrass himself. Now shithead Alex's dad comes up and Alex stops holding her hand and I really liked this little tidbit because instead of like, so you would think like normally like the romance novel trope that comes along with like, oh, he stops holding her hand when his family's nearby is like she gets insecure about it. She's like, why doesn't he want his family to know? But instead of doing that, like she's like, I'm glad Alex felt safe, like doing what he needed to feel comfortable.
Mhm.
You know, he's like, I'm
Yeah.
glad like he felt safe that he could like stop holding my hand because he like didn't want to like do that with his dad yet. And I was like,
Mhm.
God, that's so healthy.
And so Poppy, like the dad comes over and he's like, "Oh, what a lovely day, but it's just so sad that, my wife's mother, our Graham died and it won't be the same without her." And he starts like crying
No, he's like, I'm
basically.
sad that their mom isn't going to be here.
Right, he's like, "Just like she was a great member of our family, just like her daughter."
He's like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through it. And Poppy's like, but you will. You will. Because it's your son's wedding, dickhead.
Yeah. And then the dad, like, is like shook and walks away. And Alex is like, "I think I just developed a fetish that involves you telling hard truths to my father."
Yeah, the dad, Alex is also like, I need to go to therapy at this point. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go to therapy when I get back because I need to know why I don't feel comfortable like being happy in front of my dad. And I'm like,
Mhm.
that's right, Alex, because you were abused as a child. And then the dad gives a toast. And I'm like, kind of mad that Alex didn't get to the toast because
Yeah.
who was really the dad? Like David's father, it was
It's
Alex.
exactly what the
But I'm
dad
also
said.
glad, like, I don't know, it was nice that there wasn't like bitter. Like Alex and Poppy were both just like, this is the way things are, and like there's no point being bitter.
Well, the dad is explicitly like, "I can't take credit for how David turned out because, like, thank you to my sons for raising him." Like,
Yeah. And I'm like, sons or son? Like,
yeah.
did the other two really contribute or was it just Alex?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, because we even like Alex would like come home from college to drive in places because he's like, "My dad's so sweet, but he's like too flaky to remember who needs to be where and when." I'm like, "Well, how did they survive for the 9 months of the school year?" Anyway,
but also like I fucking pity his wife even when she was alive because he was probably just like the worst
I
fucking
know.
co-parent. He was like one of those dads that's just like, oh, my wife knows all the kids' schedules, and I'm
Yeah.
like, God, God. Anyway, so they don't talk. They this whole time they haven't talked about like what's next. Like, are they going to be in a relationship after this trip? Like, what's going on? And they
Mhm.
don't have time to talk the next morning because they're rushing to the airport because they oversleep. And then they finally get to the airport.
And like literally as Alex's plane is about to board, I don't even know like how like Alex is like,
It
"I
just
thought
goes
about
off the
this."
fucking
Yeah, Alex
rails.
is like, "I thought about this for so long, like, I want this. I wouldn't have done it if I wasn't, like, totally sure. I hadn't thought every angle of it." And then Poppy manages to just, like, completely word vomit and be like, "Basically, this whole trip was because I was feeling lost in my real life and, like, I just wanted to, like, try something new." And like, it just comes out in, like, the worst possible like
Yeah. She admits that she lied about like R&R sponsoring the trip, and Alex is basically like, I'm not a vacation from your real life. You need to think about what you want, and like you need to do that before we can be together because like I like this isn't like casual to me. And Poppy's like, yeah, I've kind of like taken Alex for granted and I've never really actually
Mhm.
like thought about what I wanted, which is like been her journey like from the beginning. Like she's like, I'm at a point where like I just don't know what I want anymore. And now we finally get Croatia. Basically,
It's just their worst trip yet.
yeah, it's a horrible trip. It's very awkward. Like they plan to talk this whole time, but they can't because of the photographer. And then finally, the last night, like they're both a little bit tipsy. And when when Poppy's drunk, she's like, "This is what it must feel like to be a
To
cat."
be a cat.
um, but yeah, they make out really really hard, and then Alex like stops it because he's like, "Oh, we can't do this while we're drunk." And Alex like pretends that it's okay, and it's just like the worst. Like it's like miscommunication. Like they're both just dummies. Like Alex is like, "We can't do this," and Poppy's like, "Oh yeah, no, it's fine. We'll pretend like it never happened," even though like that's definitely not what Alex wants. But like he doesn't communicate that's not what he wants. And yeah, and then like after that is like when they just have like their 2 year hiatus. Current day, like Poppy's just like really realizing that like, yeah, I was treating Alex too casually. She's in a
Mhm.
funk. And then her boss, Swapna, is the one that tells her to go to therapy. And it turns out to be Rachel's mom, who we
Yeah.
did know was a therapist from
Yeah.
the beginning.
And Poppy just also has now gotten like a totally new perspective on Croatia. Like at the time, she thought that Alex was saying like that this shouldn't have happened, like them making out because he just like he never wanted it to happen. He wanted to go back to how things were before. But really, it was because Alex was saying like it shouldn't have happened in this way. Like it shouldn't have been like rushed and we were drunk. I wanted it to be like the real deal and like actually think it through.
Yeah, they're both just dummies. So she's going to therapy now, working through all her childhood trauma, and then she meets one of her first middle school boyfriend.
Not she does not consider him. Yeah,
No,
the
but
guy
like
who
her childhood
her
bully on the
bully.
train.
Yeah.
And he apologizes. She like at first pretends like she doesn't remember how he bullied her, but then she's like, yeah, he's like, I don't know, like I guess I wanted to say I'm sorry. And then so finally she's like, sorry for what? Sorry
Jason.
for what, Jason? And then Jason's like, oh, okay. And then he was like, I was a dick. He just apologizes and he's like basically just like, it was a lot of, clearly Jason has also been to therapy. And Poppy like realizes that she needs to let it go and like stop basing her entire, because she's basically been basing her entire life on like proving her bullies wrong and like being like, I got out of Linfield and I made something of myself and I was like successful. And she's like, I've been basing my whole life on like what other people think of me instead of just
And
like
she
doing.
realized that, like, everyone grows up, and she was, like, picturing all of them as just, like, stuck as kids and, like, essentially herself as, like, yeah.
So then she decides she's going to quit her job, but she's a responsible adult. She's not going to quit it until she has a new job lined up. And then she's also going to grand gesture Alex at his school. She flies out to Ohio and she goes up to the school. And first of all, don't corner people at their place of work. I guess it's okay in this case because he did technically tell her to come find him, like when she figured shit out. But
Mhm.
in general, again, we've said it before. Don't do this to people at places they can't leave. Don't.
She goes after school time, so he could
That's true.
leave,
Yeah.
but still,
But
like
before I do want to point out one thing before she gets to the school is that her brother is writing a gritty Smurf
yeah,
origin story as a movie.
at least one sex scene, and then presenting it
Yeah.
to the entire family
Yes.
over Zoom
So
or whatever.
Emily Henry, if you ever get like a little tipsy, you want to write some bonus content, I would be very interested in reading this screenplay.
Uh-huh.
Please. Thank you. Yeah. So Poppy gets to the school. Naturally, she can't get into the school. She's like, yeah, I realized they don't just let strange adults into school. Like, that's a very good thing. Like, but it's very inconvenient for
Inconvenient.
me. And she runs into Sarah and she apologizes to Sarah. And Sarah's like, yeah, I mean, it definitely would have been better for all of us if like you or he or I would have like figured out that you guys were in love with each other. Like it just
Yeah.
like she's like, that really fucking sucked. But Sarah is just like, she's like whatever. Like I
She's like, "I thought you were the for a long time, I thought you were, like, the cause of all my problems, but then you, like, basically dipped out of his life after Tuscany, and our problems just got worse." So, poor Sarah. I don't know. I feel bad for Sarah, but also, like,
also she told Alex their relationship was as boring as the
no,
library they
that's
met
I'm
him.
not gonna blame her for that because maybe it was, but I don't know. Like, it was a mean thing to say, but also, like,
Yeah.
I
I feel
can't
bad for
I don't wanna, like,
Sarah.
victim blame, be like, she should've just, like, ditched Alex, but
But also just like, yeah, like, I don't know. I just like can't. I know this is me. This is very much a me thing, but I just like can't imagine being in a relationship with someone who like I couldn't like trust. You know what I mean? And like Sarah, like very clearly, like the whole relationship, she's like doesn't trust. She doesn't like Poppy because like she doesn't trust them together.
I don't know if it's as much doesn't trust them together as she feels like Alex is giving a lot of himself to Poppy and as if it's like a zero sum game. And that means there's like less for her. Like, I don't know if I don't know it's necessarily that she's like constantly suspecting him of cheating as it is just like having a person to compete for like his attention and affection.
Anyway, Sarah tells Poppy where to find Alex, which is at like the local bar that the teachers hang out in. And Poppy runs to him and she gives him this big long speech in the middle of the bar. And I won't read the whole thing, but like one of the final lines, she tells him, "You're not a vacation and you're not the answer to my career crisis. But when I'm in a crisis or I'm sick or I'm sad, you're the only thing I want. And when I'm happy, you make me so much happier. I still have a lot to figure out, but the one thing I know is wherever you are, that's where I belong. I'll never belong anywhere like I belong with you. No matter what I'm feeling, I want you next to me. You're home to me, Alex. And I think I'm that for you too." And I just like, I don't know, this whole scene, I was like, this is just one of the best final confession of love scenes.
Hmm.
I
Except
don't
that he
know.
doesn't immediately like sweep her into his arms and he
I
makes
know,
her
but
like go
I'm
cry in
saying
the
just
parking lot.
specifically in the words, because I feel like a lot of times I've like I experience like authors will have these big long paragraph expression of love scenes at the end of romance. Like that's a very common thing. And just a
Mhm.
lot of times they just feel like they just feel like okay, these people are just like listing things that they like about each other and it just doesn't feel natural. And these speeches go on for pages and pages and pages. And it's just 100%. I'm like, yeah, I can imagine someone saying it. And maybe it's also because Julia Whalen is doing this audiobook and Julia Whalen is like fabulous.
Mhm.
But yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
she also and then she finishes her speech by by showing him a picture of a house plant that she's managed to keep alive because this whole time Poppy's like, I can't even keep like any plants alive. I can't keep a pet alive or like whatever. But she's like, I'm serious now and I've kept this plant alive. But Alex turns her down because he's scared.
Alex is like, "I don't want you to have to give anything up for me. I just want us to just make sense and we don't, Poppy, and I can't watch us fall apart again." And Poppy's like, "Okay. I just want you to know I don't regret doing this because I would give up anything for you." And then she goes out into the parking lot and starts
Yeah.
crying.
Yeah. She says the line, she says, I don't regret telling you. I said I'd give up anything, risk anything for you, and I meant it. And in her own head, she's like, even my own heart. And she says, I love you all the way, Alex. I couldn't have lived with myself if I hadn't at least told you. Yeah. Then she just full on ugly cries by her car. And Alex runs out and like he admits he's like basically in therapy. I learned
But I'm
that
afraid of
I
being happy. And he's like, "I
yeah
know if I went back with you, if I got on a plane with you back to New York, I'd be so fucking happy for as long as you'd have me. And I want it so badly. And I regret every chance I had to tell you how I felt. But I'm just afraid of you realizing I bore you or meeting someone
Sarah.
else or being unhappy and staying." Oh. He's like, "I'm afraid of you dying and the world feeling useless. I'm afraid I won't be able to keep getting out of bed if you're gone. And if we had kids, they'd have these horrible lives where their amazing mom is gone and their dad can't look after them,"
My God.
which is his life.
But then even he's like, I'm scared of like us spending our whole lives together and then like you dying and like me having to like, oh my God. This man is so soft.
He's so traumatized. Yeah.
He's so traumatized. But he's going to therapy. It's okay. We get confirmation that he has been going to therapy these past few months.
So they're together. And before we hit on the epilogue or last chapter, whatever it is, can I just say something I forgot to mention is that Poppy is like staying with her parents right now at home, and her mom made Buckeye cookies, which I Googled what those are, and I would like to add them to the list of book foods that we have to make at some point because they sound so fucking good. It's basically peanut butter inside chocolate in a cookie. Like I don't know what to
Wow.
tell you. It sounds amazing.
Delicious.
Yeah. So add that to the peppermint creams.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, then we get to the epilogue, and the epilogue is just them being like super domestic and like they're living in New York and like then they're gonna go like on a trip to finally go to Norway and like Poppy's quit her job. Yeah, and then they're gonna go to back to Ohio and like fix up Grandma Betty's house and like see whether they like Ohio or see whether they like New York. And it's just yeah, it's like the opposite. Like all their trips were like them going on these like grand adventures. And so like having it end on like them just like washing the dishes and like cuddling.
Yeah, and she's like, "It turns out Alex can't fall asleep if we're spooning." I don't understand how anyone can fall asleep while, like, touching another person. Like, I
It's
don't
just so
understand that. I
hot.
don't get it. Yeah, and also just uncomfortable. Like, I need to fidget for at least, like, a good 20 minutes before I can, like, fall asleep.
Yeah, no, I'm like, don't touch me. That's my
Yeah.
thing. It's like the older I get, the more and more convinced I am that like I think I would need separate bedrooms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's not even like a oh like if like they snore or like
No.
whatever. Like it's just like I don't like other people being in bed. Like it's so much hotter when there's another person in the bed with you.
It's such a scam.
Like it's so much like I like what if we don't like having to go to bed just because somebody else is going to bed or like vice versa is really stressful. I don't like having that.
Especially in this day and age of like we exclusively had twin beds growing up, right? And I actually didn't mind that. Like I was fine with that when I had it and I like being up against the wall and like whatever. But in this day and age of all these like, kids living large with their queen size beds from the age of 12, how does anyone go from like their queen size bed to themselves at the age of 12 to like being an adult and having to share a queen size bed. I guess maybe
Yeah.
college is like, brings them back down to earth a little bit with their like extra long, twin bed that they have to sleep in
Yeah.
for 4 years. I don't know. But
It just,
like,
yeah. Like maybe, but not even this. I was gonna say, like, maybe if it's like a California king and we each get
sure.
basically like our own queen
Yeah.
size bed size. But even then, it's like, again, it's my thing of like sharing a room with someone means that you have to like adjust their schedule,
Yeah.
like your schedule to fit theirs. And I'm like, I don't want to like have to go to bed just because somebody else is going to bed, or I don't want them to wake me up in the morning. You know what I mean? Like,
The biggest thing for me besides the size is I love having my bed against the wall. And it just feels so much more secure when your back is to the wall and like no monsters can sneak up on you, you know? You gotta have your neck tucked for the vampires, back to the wall for the monsters. And if you have another person, it's really inconvenient to have a queen size bed up against a wall because when, you can't get out
Yeah.
of bed unless you're like rolling over onto the other side or you like slide down all the way, which is just annoying. You can't have a bedside table, like yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, separate bedrooms. Bring that back, baby. Okay.
Woohoo.
All right. Cat scale. Lots of
Mhm.
cat quotes in this one.
Oh
And
yeah.
Flannery O'Connor.
Mhm. She even
What are we
says
thinking?
she wants to be a cat. I think it's the vibes are low, but the explicit references are off the
Yeah.
charts.
Not only we have a cat character and cat language.
Yeah.
And Alex is a cat, what for sure.
Arguably, yeah.
Like Alex is 100% a
Uh-huh,
cat.
uh-huh. We got Poppy the alleged dog, but, like, who's to say?
No, I would say Poppy's like she's like a nice Pomeranian. You know what I
I
mean?
like Pomeranians. They're usually nice, but their owners are mean in my experience.
I just have a bias in general against small dogs with the exception of like pugs and
Pomeranians
like
are,
King
like,
Charles Spaniels.
not that small. They're, like, very
They're
hardy
pretty
and, like,
small.
medium size. I like them a
Anyway,
lot.
Poppy's like a nice Pomeranian. That's what
Yeah.
she's like high maintenance, but like she likes to cuddle.
Pomeranians are so fucking cute. They're, like, the cutest, like,
They're
small
so
dog
fucking
besides
cute. I
pugs.
know.
Yeah.
Anything else to discuss? We pointed out I was very specific about writing out the cat quotes.
Mhm.
I even downloaded the ebook from the library in case I got the phrasing right on some of
Yeah.
them.
Tom.
Oh my god. Yeah, I didn't notice. I didn't read that
Yeah,
part
tell
with
us
my
if you know
eyeballs.
anyone named Tom as a first name spelled T-H-A-M. I'm just curious, like, with that pronunciation and that spelling. I just wanna know because behind the name is not 100% right, but, like, behind the name says it's only a surname. So, all right. And I don't know how it's pronounced as a surname either.
Anyway,
Three.
cats. Wait, fuck. I don't know. This is hard because it has cat language, but like not cat language and like because we were talking about Mary Winterbourne, where like it didn't really have cat vibes, but had a lot of cat language. But like this isn't even like doesn't it's not the same kind of cat language. I don't know.
Yeah, it's not sex-related
It's
cat
not like
language.
traditional cat scale cat
Right,
language.
right.
All right, I think I got it.
3, 2,
2, 1,
1, 7.
6,
I almost switched to 6, but I went with my
6.5.
traditional choice.
All right. 6.5 on the cat scale, babies. Rachel, where can they find
They can
us?
find us on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook at We Read It One Night. They can find us on Twitter at We Read It Podcast. Or you can email us with more listener suggestions like this book or literally anything you want at We Read It. We Read It One Night at gmail.com.
And remember, if you have the ability, wherever you are listening to this podcast, to rate and review, please do drop us a rate and review. That includes you guys, Spotify people. Now, just an FYI, Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We recently have gotten some great reviews on Apple
Yeah.
Podcasts.
It can be
So
anything you want.
keep
Meow.
them coming. Keep
Godspeed,
them coming.
comrade. All right.
Godspeed,
Anything you want. Wait,
comrades.
that wasn't my Godspeed comrade. That was just an example
Oh.
of something they can give us
Oh.
a review. Anyway, Godspeed,
Godspeed,
comrade.
comrades.